What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a minute since my last upload, and that S because my life has been completely turned upside down by what I found in this house. You guys know I bought this place a few months ago. It's an old farmhouse built in the late 1800s, and it definitely needs a lot of work. I've been documenting the renovation process, but I had to stop everything to share this story with you. Honestly, I'm still trying to process what happened, and I feel like you're the only people who might actually believe me. So, the project for the last couple of weeks was this main downstairs living area. It's a big room, but it always felt off. The dimensions just didn't seem right. There's this one long, flat wall that separates the living room from the kitchen, and it always bugged me. When you tapped on it, most of it was solid, what you'd expect from plaster and lath. But there was this one section, right near the floor behind where an old bookshelf used to be, that sounded different. It was hollow. At first I just brushed it off. Old houses are weird, right? They settle, they have quirks. But it kept nagging at me. So last Tuesday, I was pulling up the old gross carpet, and I decided to take a closer look at that wall. I got my pry bar and started gently working at the baseboard in that hollow-sounding spot. And that's when I felt it. The baseboard wasn't just nailed on, it was attached to something that moved. It felt like a latch. My heart started pounding. I pulled a bit harder, and a section of the wall, about 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall, creaked open. You guys. I was staring into pitch-black darkness. A wave of cold, musty air just rolled out, and it smelled like old paper, dust, and something else. Something faintly sweet. Almost like dried flowers. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it inside. It wasn't a crawl space, it was a room. A tiny, hidden room that wasn't on any of the blueprints. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone steady. I had to go in. I had to know what was in there. I squeezed through the opening, my flashlight beam cutting through decades of darkness. The room was small, maybe 6 by 8 feet, and completely sealed. The walls were lined with dark wooden shelves, and they were filled from floor to ceiling with books. Hundreds of old, leather-bound books. But that wasn't the strangest part. In the center of the room there was a small, elegant wooden desk and a single chair. It was like a time capsule, perfectly preserved. As I panned my light across the desk, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the desk was a single, thick, leather-bound journal. It was open to a page, as if someone had just gotten up and walked away. A fountain pen was resting beside it, the ink in its well long since dried up. I carefully reached out and touched the journal. The paper was brittle, yellowed with age. The handwriting was a beautiful, looping cursive. I started reading. And that's when this whole thing went from a cool discovery to something unsettling. The entries were dated, starting in 1902. They were written by a woman named Ilara. According to her journal, she was the original owner's daughter. She described this room as her sanctuary, her escape. Her father was apparently a very strict, controlling man who disapproved of her love for writing and what he called fantastical stories. So, she had this room built in secret. It was her private world where she could read and write freely. She wrote about her dreams, her fears, her hopes for a different life. It was fascinating and incredibly sad. But then the entries started to change. Around 1905, her writing became more frantic. She wasn't just writing stories anymore. She was documenting strange occurrences in the house. She wrote about hearing whispers in walls where no one should be, of shadows moving on their own in the periphery of her vision. She described a cold presence that seemed to follow her, a feeling of being constantly watched. Her family thought she was losing her mind, driven mad by her fanciful notions. They threatened to send her away. The journal entries get more and more desperate. She was convinced something was in the house with her, something that was drawn to her. She wrote, "It calls to me from the corners of the rooms. It promises knowledge, but I fear its price. She started spending almost all her time in this hidden room, convinced it was the only place she was safe. She believed the entity couldn't enter her sanctuary. I was standing there, in that same room, reading this, and I swear the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. The last entry is dated October 31st, 1905. It's almost illegible. The handwriting is shaky and rushed. It reads, "He knows about my room. Father found the door. He says he's boarding it up for my own good, to cure me of my delusions. But I know the truth. He's not locking me in. He's locking it out. But I think it's already too late. It's not in the house anymore. It's in me. And that's it. That's the last entry. The rest of the journal is completely blank. What happened to Ilara? Did her father really board her up in here? Or did something else happen?" I searched the entire room for any other clue. Tucked away on a high shelf, behind a stack of books, I found a small wooden box. I almost didn't see it. It was covered in a thick layer of dust. I brought it out into the light, and my hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single old-fashioned photograph. It was a portrait of a young woman with dark, intense eyes. She looked serious, intelligent, and deeply sad. On the back, written in that same beautiful cursive, was one word: Ilara. I was holding a picture of the woman who wrote the journal. Looking at her face, her story felt so much more real. But there was something else in the box underneath the photo. It was a small tarnished silver locket. I managed to pry it open, and what I saw inside, honestly, I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't a picture. Inside the locket, on one side, was a tiny, intricate carving of an open eye. On the other side was a miniature hand-painted portrait. But it wasn't of a person. It was a swirling mass of dark colors, blacks and deep purples, with a single point of light in the center, like a distant star. It was bizarre and deeply unsettling. As I stared at it, I felt this strange pull, a sense of vertigo, like I was falling into that tiny painting. I snapped the locket shut and my heart was hammering against my ribs. I haven't slept properly since I found that room. I keep the door to it closed and blocked, but sometimes, late at night, I think I can hear things. Faint whispers, like the ones Ilara described in her journal. I feel like I'm being watched. Am I just freaking myself out because of what I read? Or did I disturb something that was dormant in this house for over a century? I don't know what to do. I feel like I've stumbled into a story that hasn't finished yet. I wanted to share this with you all because, well, I don't know who else to tell. Have any of you ever experienced anything like this? Found something in your home that just can't be explained? Please, let me know in the comments. I could really use some advice or just, I don't know, reassurance that I'm not going crazy. I'll keep you updated on what happens next. For now, thank you for listening to my story. If you found this as wild as I did, consider subscribing for more updates. I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Stay safe, everyone.